Peace, everybody. Peace. Welcome to another Trauma Tip Tuesday. I am Nazia, and this is No More Trauma Consulting. Tonight's episode is going to be about, does spirituality eradicate trauma? Now, the disclaimer for this is that this video is by no means an attempt to offend anyone's particular spiritual practice, whether it be under the tenets of a religion or whether you are under the tenets of spirituality and you basically just do your own thing, for lack of a better term. This video is not intended to criticize, condemn, judge anyone's particular spiritual practice. This video is intended to answer some questions about when one has a spiritual practice, does it just simply eradicate the trauma that you've endured? Okay, so that's my disclaimer. All right, so trauma is something that happens, and the event that happens is trauma, right? How you handle it or perceive it or cope with it makes it traumatic. Okay. Now, when you have experienced trauma in any form, and then you adopt or start participating in a spiritual practice, some people have a tendency of believing that if you simply just pray, then, you'll feel better. It'll go away. God will teach you how to forgive. God will show you how to forgive. God will, just wipe everything away. And I do not argue the fact that the creator, the source, God, however you identify with the creator, I have no doubt that presence, that energy is all powerful and can do miraculous things. I don't doubt that at all. But this video is not about my belief. This video is about understanding that because you have a spiritual practice, that does not mean that the trauma just goes away. Okay? Some people ask, Nazia, I pray, I go to church, I go to the masjid, I offer the salat, I go to a temple, I meditate, I'm making offerings to my ancestors, whatever your spiritual practice is, but I still feel depressed. I still think about my trauma. I still haven't forgiven my abuser, right? And the burden of feeling like you have surrendered to the creator and you're telling the creator, remove this from me, but you still struggle with it. That's a burden, because no one wants to live with the trauma. Right? So I have some things that I kind of want to point out to you. This is not specific to any one particular spirituality, any one particular practice. This is in general. And so if it resonates with you, great. If it doesn't, eat the fish and spit out the bones. Okay? So, answering the question, having a spiritual practice does not eradicate trauma. It does not just simply go away because all of a sudden now you're spiritual. It does not just go away because you've surrendered to God. It does not just go away because of those things. Now, spirituality can be used as a vehicle. Let's look at it like that. Let's look at it as if spirituality is used as a vehicle of healing, right? When you have a spiritual practice that is life affirming, based on love, compassion, freedom, goodwill, you can use that as a vehicle to get to your healing, right? So for example, using the example of a vehicle, if you do not keep the vehicle serviced, eventually it will not run properly, right? Hence, it will limit where and how far you can go. So let's bring that in a little bit more. So if you're looking at your spirituality as a vehicle to get you to your healing, if you're using prayer and therapy, if you're using meditation and a life coach, if you're using these things as vehicles to get to your healing, then, and especially if it's under the tenets of love and compassion, right? Like any vehicle, you have to keep it serviced. So what does that mean? You have to keep doing the work. You have to keep getting the tires rotated. You have to get the oil changed. You have to make sure all the fluids are topped off. You have to do the work so that this vehicle that you're using can continue to take you to your destination. Am I clear about that? We use our spirituality as a vehicle. It does not mean that because I'm spiritual or because I have a spiritual practice, all of a sudden it's just going to go away. I'm going to sit and I'm going to pray and I'm going to hope and I'm going to wish and I'm going to light 10,000 candles and I'm going to, go to church Monday, Tuesday, Bible study on Wednesday, choir practice on Thursday, Sunday school on Sunday, all day Sunday. Because you do all of that does not mean that the trauma is just going to go away. You have to do the work. And so in doing the work, it's like servicing that car, servicing that vehicle that's going to get you to the destination. And destination is always healing, right? Now, on the contrary, spirituality can also make trauma worse if the practice is life denying, right? I'm looking down because I have notes. If the practice is life denying, so it's not uncommon for trauma survivors to battle with self-negative thoughts or self-negative talk. That's not uncommon, right? Any trauma survivor typically battles with that. Now, when trauma survivors participate in any form of a spiritual practice that is life denying, which is based on blame, guilt, shame, judgment, and control, then these negative aspects will only pull one down into a bottomless pit. So this is how spirituality can be used to make trauma worse. Spirituality can be used to make trauma worse if your practices are cultivated in life denying, which means you're not speaking life into the situation. Your spiritual practice is riddled in guilt and shame and control and judgment. Then it's going to make it worse, because then it's only going to validate what you already think and feel about yourself. Oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, I'm not doing this enough. I'm not praying enough. I'm not making offering enough. I'm not going to church or going to the mosque or doing this enough. I'm not doing enough of something. So it only validates what you already feel about yourself of being unworthy, being that you're not enough. So when those practices are riddled in control and things like that, then it can make trauma worse. Now, in this case, let's look at that spiritual practice, and we're going to compare the life-denying spiritual practice to a gun. Okay, stay with me. Now, the bullets are guilt, shame, judgment, etc. One of three things are going to happen if that is the case. The first one, you fire the gun. The bullet, guilt, shame, judgment, it may misfire, in which consider yourself blessed, right? 2, it will graze you, which means you will feel the impact. However, it's not going to be damaging, right? And number 3, worst case, it penetrates. And in this case, there is damaging. And the worst case scenario is that it can take your life. Now, again, we're going to keep this under the structure of spirituality, and spirituality having spiritual practices that are life denying, right? So if your spiritual practice is not affirming, if it's not edifying, if it's life denying, then we're going to use the analogy as if your spiritual practice is a gun and the bullets are the guilt, the shame, the judgment, and the control. Okay? Now, stay with me. One of 3 things are going to happen. It's going to misfire, which means, compared to spirituality, You may realize that this spiritual practice is life denying, but when you go to use it, you're not affected either way. It's a misfire. You're not affected either way. It doesn't benefit you and it doesn't harm you. It's a misfire. You're not affected either way, right? The second option, it could graze you, right? So that means your spiritual practice, when you're practicing it, it can affect you. You feel the impact, but it doesn't damage you to the point where you no longer want to practice anything anymore, right? Or it doesn't add to the trauma. And then the third option is it could penetrate. It could go through. It might hit some bones. It might hit some arteries, but it's going to be damaging. Sometimes the damage is rectifiable. Sometimes it isn't. And the worst case scenario is that it takes your breath away. It takes your life away. The life that we have is breath. And sometimes when you are already traumatized, when you are already going in a downward spiral of depression and unworthiness and not being enough, and then you start to practice a spiritual practice that is life denying, right? That doesn't edify, it doesn't pull you up, it doesn't make you, feel good about yourself, right? Then that continues to take you down in a downward spiral, and it can destroy you or make the trauma that you're already dealing with worse, because now you have another set of trauma. And so this is what I want to communicate to you regarding this topic, is that the spirituality is not what you're looking for. The spirituality, it should be used as a vehicle, but when you're trying to heal from trauma, you still need to do your work. You still need to service your engine. You still need to make sure that there's gas in the car. You need to make sure that there's air in the tires, or else you're going to have a vehicle, the spirituality, sitting outside your car, sitting outside your house, that won't move, and it's not taking you anywhere. So you're constantly participating in this spirituality, but if you're not servicing it with other things to make sure this vehicle can continue to run, then you're going to be stuck and you're not going to move, and it's going to determine how and where you are able to go. So to answer the question, spirituality or having a spiritual practice does not eradicate trauma. But what I want you all to realize is that you still do your work, still talk to a therapist, still go to counseling, even in addition to your spiritual practice, and be patient with yourself. Don't believe or don't think that because you are praying and because you are doing all of these rituals and these things and you have this new way of being, that all of a sudden the hurt, the pain, the memories just go away, because they don't. Okay? So I want you guys to understand that spirituality does not take away your trauma, that you still are responsible for doing your work. You're still responsible for doing your work. I hope that this resonates with someone. I hope that someone gets something out of this. If so, please comment. Let me know that this penetrated you. Let me know that this resonates with you. Tell me your story about your spirituality and your trauma. Like this video. Comment on this video, and most of all, share this video. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much. And remember, healing is a journey, not a destination. Peace.